Welcome to Wild Contemplations with Kristin and Cori. We are back again for our however many episode this is. 3-ish months in, 3-4 months in, maybe. We're really, really glad to be here on this journey with you. My name is Kristin. I am one of the hosts. I'm a 1/3 emotional projector, Sag Sun, Libra Moon, Pisces rising. And Cori and I are taking a journey around the wheel through the lens of gene keys, weaving in astrology, human design, and our raw experience of all the energies. So it's been really, really amazing to sit through this journey so far, and I'm excited to continue. So, Cori, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Cori. I'm a 4/6 sacral manifesting generator, a Cancer Sun, Virgo Moon, and Virgo Rising. And yeah, as Kristin said, I'm just super grateful to be on this journey with her and all of you. Last week, we were contemplating the sun in 52 and the earth in 58. We'll probably do a little check-in with that. We were kind of near the end of the transit when we met last time, so we've spent a few days in this newest one that we're contemplating today, which is the sun in 39 and the earth in 38. But first, we will take a few breaths together just to settle into the space. So if it feels good to soften your gaze or close your eyes. Maybe bring a hand to the body. And we'll just take 3 breaths together. Right. So last episode, we were contemplating the sun in 52 with the frequency bands of stress, restraint, and stillness, and the earth in 58 with the frequency bands of dissatisfaction, vitality, and bliss. Today, we will be contemplating the sun in 39 with the frequency bands of provocation, dynamism, and liberation, and the earth in 38 with the frequency bands of struggle, perseverance, and honor. So we'll just do a little check-in, but I figured we'd probably have those energies woven through what we share.
Yeah, I this is such a different feeling from last episode that we recorded. I was really like feeling spicy when we started recording last time, and today I actually feel pretty at ease, pretty relaxed. Um, I've definitely had some periods of like snippiness this week. I've been a little snippy at times. I've definitely moved through some emotions this week for sure. Um, but yeah, here I feel like I'm on the other side of that. And I think when I think about the emotions that I moved through, yeah, it just I don't know how to explain it. It felt moody, so I felt like on one hand, I just didn't want to be bothered or be around other people. And on another hand, I was like, I'm here sitting in it, like with the other human. Um, so it was weird. It was weird. Like I didn't want to be there, but then I was there, sort of confronting it. Um, so yeah, moodiness this week, and now I'm on the other side of it. I feel like yesterday I was really just relaxed, and I did an event yesterday, and I was very much like in a just a space of receiving and just presence and feeling so much gratitude for the people I was interacting with. And I didn't feel rushed in time. I was just like in the moment, and it was really, really beautiful. Um, and that it makes me think about how honestly it's just such a reminder of that's my work. Like I love being in those spaces. And the fact that I can feel that way in those spaces is what tells me over and over again that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. So just a little, I hadn't really thought about that until I just expressed it, but
I love that. Like tuning into the feeling of the place too for you with like that open identity center feels like it gives me kind of full body chills just knowing like when you're in the right place doing the right
Mhm.
work for you because of the way that it feels. So I'm celebrating and witnessing that for you.
Thank you.
And yeah, the since we've met last, I think I was laughing the one day because I'm like, ooh, now I'm feeling a little spicy. um yeah, this transit that we're moving through right now, that we're going to be contemplating today, I can certainly like feel it uh, as the sun moved there in the 39. It felt like I was being, well, it didn't feel like I was being like triggered. And it was very moody. Like I just wanted to be by myself because I could feel the emotional waves moving. I'm an open emotional in human design. And right now, where the sun is in the 39th gene key, um, it reaches towards the emotional solar plexus, and we have the north node transiting the gate that it connects with, the 55th gate. So it's creating a channel collectively, an emotional wave. And it's an individual circuitry, so it's unique to the individual. It can be kind of unpredictable. And I could feel those emotions moving. And typically, um, what I like to do is take space and time to myself. But it was like life was not allowing it to happen. And it was like poking me in these different ways where it was like, oh no, we're like trying to get you to see something, see the places where, um, maybe boundaries are being crossed, or you're not asking for what you need, or you're not speaking your truth, all these little places. So at first it was a little like, ooh, but actually, the more that I kind of leaned into it, there were moments that I was actually like really proud of myself because I could just see that I do have more of a strength and power in my voice and like expressing those needs and making it clear how I feel um, and that's been something that's been a bit challenging on my path for me to do because I do have that sensitivity in the emotional field. And sometimes I don't want to rock the boat anymore. Um, but this week was an invitation for me to really look at the places where I'm being bothered, where I'm being provoked, where I'm being poked. And notice that it's there to give me information. And so I'll just kind of maybe move into these because I'm kind of already talking about it. But the sun we have in the 39th gene key, again, I'll just say the frequency bands: provocation, dynamism, and liberation. In human design, this is the gate of the provocateur. And it lives in the root center and reaches towards the emotional solar plexus in that 55th gate that I was sharing that the North Node is moving through. This is individual circuitry. And so it's, again, gonna show up uniquely for each of us. And in the I Ching, this hexagram translates to obstruction. And so we can just kind of feel into the energy. It is very physical. It's again in the root center. We have this past transit, the one we're contemplating today, and the next one will be in this root center with both the sun and the earth. And so it is inviting us to be very much in the body and with the breath. There is a lot of, yeah, a lot of physical energy associated with it. And it's wanting to move, but it's kind of like it runs up against maybe some obstructions, some obstacles, and the provocation of it is like to get us to pay attention to those, to see where the energy has kind of become stagnant or feels blocked. Usually these are like perceived blockages of the mind, and it asks us to like take a wider view and look at how again we can kind of expand our perspective of what's possible and the different ways that we can move that energy and kind of, yeah, clear those. And then we have the earth in the 38 with the frequency bands of struggle, perseverance, and honor. This also lives in the root center of the human design body graph. It it is the gate of the fighter, and it reaches towards the spleen um, to connect with the 28th gene key, which Kristin and I both have. So when we have um, this key activated, it will create a channel for us, which is the channel of struggle. This is also individual circuitry, so it will be unique for each of us. It's often connected to our sense of like purpose in the world because that's the 28th. That's the kind of energy of the 28th gene key. And yeah, it's like it's asking us to really consider where are we channeling our energy? Like, what are we doing this for? What are we quote unquote fighting for? Like, where is our struggle taking us? And like, are we um aligned in that with like intention um and again what we know our purpose to be, not in something that we do, but who we are and how we feel and those sort of things. In the I Ching, this translates to opposition. So you can get this sense that we're coming up against something right now. There's friction. There's that kind of, yeah, spark like energy that maybe little annoyances, little, yeah, just can think of like poking and prodding and like the sibling that's like trying to get you to like lose it. And again, it's, yeah, there's this invitation here um to really channel our energy, that dynamic energy in a way that is meaningful to us instead of, maybe getting more caught up in the fight or in the argument or in the annoyance. So, yeah, that's what's coming up for me.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I also felt triggered this week. I don't think I could find words for how I was feeling this week, but I for sure felt triggered. Um, and specifically around some old patterns that have happened in my life, sort of re-emerging. And my response to them was really interesting. Like I said, I was like, I didn't want to be around the person triggering me. And then yet I was like, but I'm here. I'm here and I'm showing up. And I'm not really wanting to talk about it as much. I'm more wanting to process internally. And, as you were alluding to, like, figure out or navigate how do I want to move through this in a meaningful way? And I'm not there yet. I'm still in the process of that right now. Um, and I think that, being an emotional and navigating something like that, there really are waves, where sometimes I'm really calm about it and just in my process. And then other times something little might happen that sort of, pokes the wave again. And then I'm like, you know, sometimes I joke the Hulk Kristin comes out, or moody Kristin, snippy Kristin comes out, or yeah, or I find myself in those spaces where I know that there's something I need to address, and there's parts of me avoiding it in a sense too. It's like, yes, I'm in my process, and yes, I can sense that there's still a little avoidance there too. Um, but I'm not rushing the process either. I'm not in a hurry to figure out what it means. And I think that's okay, you know. Um, it's really it's really beautiful when you're on the journey and you can witness yourself experiencing things in such different ways. This came up actually in a lot of the readings I did yesterday. I was feeling a lot of energy around um, needing grounding. Was a big theme yesterday. And I remember one of the girls, I said to her, I said, like, if you're an artist, for example, and you are going to paint, maybe before you paint, it's just taking a moment to tune into the places I was doing a human design reading for her. So like where she's defined, right? She had openness in her head and ajna and openness in her root and solar plexus. And so when I see that, I think of somebody kind of running on like an air sandwich, like above earth. They're not really like grounded all the time. So I always like reinforce grounding for them, but she's got all this definition in the middle of her body graph. And so I said to her, like, tune into those parts that feel secure, that you know what they feel like, that, you have that consistent access to. When you sit down to paint, take a moment to just touch base with them and land where you're at. That is grounding. So it's not always like, I'm going to go walk in the grass or touch a tree or sit on the earth or whatever, right? We can find grounding in different ways. And the intention piece, that you brought up, Cori, too, it's being intentional about, like when I landed in the space yesterday, right? I'm intentionally reconnecting with my energy in that space over and over again so that I can be in my body, so that I can be grounded, so that I can show up and do these readings for, each person in an authentic, integral way, right? Like it's my job as a space holder to do that, right? And so I think it's taking elements of that, even be your own space holder to find that grounding, right? So as we just to loop back to the emotional wave piece, like as I move through this emotional wave, that's a lot of what I'm doing, is just kind of not letting myself get lost in the emotions. I'm coming back. And maybe it's not avoidance. I don't know. I haven't fully processed that yet. Maybe it's some avoidance, maybe it's not. But I'm taking a moment to kind of step back and say, and just come back to my body and not get lost in the wave of it, the emotional wave. Because when I do that, that's when the Hulk Kristin comes out usually. When I'm being poked to stay in the emotional place, when I need time to come back and be internal with it, that's when those explosions come out. And I have the 1949 for reference, anyone listening in human design. So it does build and explode. So like I can be poked over time, or I can be poked very quickly in a short period of time. And it just depends on what the trigger is, really. Um, but yeah, it's a fun, not so fun channel to navigate. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, I love what you share about like being okay with being in it and moving through it and not having an answer or a resolution and just knowing that that is okay. I think that, yeah, carries a lot of power for me because so often there is this advice out there that's like, talk about things, resolve this. And really, since coming to human design and being on this like deconditioning journey, I've realized that what actually is more useful in like conflicts and um the kind of, yeah, emotional waves that are created when we come together with others is space and is time. um because when we are like in the in the room with another person, even we can talk about it like this, and each person has their emotional wave moving, and then on top of it, say we have like right now a collective wave coming through too. So there's these different waves happening, and what can happen a lot of times is that it starts kind of just getting more and more wavy, right? Like things are getting um, bouncing off one another, looping back between. And I think sometimes if we try to uh, find a resolution in all the waviness, it can just not really work out so well. But if like that wave kind of goes over there, this wave goes over here, we have still this collective wave and we're just kind of letting it do its thing because obviously that will end, in a few days. Um, a lot of that can kind of settle. And then when we come back together, maybe actually the thing that was triggering isn't even there anymore because it wasn't really necessarily about any actual situation. It was just being like attached to a situation, but it was more about the collective emotions that we're moving through. And then it's easy to create like a narrative around that. Like, why do I feel like this? As someone who has that like open emotional, I've spent a lot of time trying to like figure out emotions. And what I've come to in my own experience, and again, this is going to be unique for each of us, but for me is like there's nothing really to figure out because it's again collective energy that's moving through. Actually, what's most useful is that separation of just like the observation that you're talking about, the witnessing of it, the allowing it to move through, the sitting with it and being with it, and not needing to like hold on too tightly to any part of it, but just kind of floating with it, um, because it moves on its own. And when it moves, like a lot of the stuff that we could think needs to get figured out moves with it. Um, and that's just what's been, probably one of the greatest gifts, I think, of finding human design, in particular, because of like understanding the way that my emotional center is. And each of us, that will be unique. And so, like, for instance, if you having a defined emotional center when we have a, transit that's activating another channel, then you still need to, not need to, but you still like want to honor your wave that moves through you. Like you're saying, like, I think when you're talking about the grounding, what I keep hearing, excuse me, is like coming back to your own way of being. And that's going to look different for everybody. Coming back to your own like center and your own just like feeling of groundedness, but it's going to look different for each of us because of the way that our blueprint is activated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I I lost my train of thought. Um, oh, I know what I was going to say. Attachment styles. So when we're navigating emotional experiences with other people too, I find that attachment styles comes into play as well. Like I am someone who um, appreciates the stepping back and processing on my own, but there are people that, and it sounds like you too, Cori, right? Like the space is warranted. But there are people out there who will say things like you need to talk it through, like move through the energy, like when it's happening and all of that. And sometimes those waves are like when we get these triggers, sometimes we have the wherewithal within us to neutralize them. And we don't need to talk it out with someone. I think that can almost be re-traumatizing to the trigger, honestly, And so to go back to my attachment style thing, what I've noticed is that people who tend to be like I tend to be more avoidant attachment, so I'm going to want to step back and process on my own. But the key there is that I actually process on my own. I don't just step back and avoid that it even happened. Um, Sometimes I think I do need those little reminders to like attend to the emotion though. Like, and I don't know if that's in like my Sag sun or like wherever that lies, but it's somewhere in my chart that like says I might not necessarily be the one that's like, oh, there's emotions to deal with. Let me take some time to do that with them. Sometimes I do not want to. But for the most part, when I step back, I am looking at them to some degree in my own timing. Someone who has an anxious attachment style is going to tend to want to be processing in the moment, because the separation is what creates a lot of the anxiety then, and then it sort of spirals from there. At least that's what I've noticed in navigating emotions with other people. Um, and that's an interesting dynamic, especially when you're in an emotional conversation with someone who, when you have opposite styles like that, how do you honor both people, you know? Um, and I don't quite know the answer to that because sometimes, most of the time, when I go off to process something on my own, I don't need to come back and process it with the other person. And the person who's anxious about it might still be telling themselves some sort of story around it without having talked about it, where I've had that internal dialogue that I need and to feel complete with that. And should I need to come back and have that conversation, I can do that in a very grounded way, not in an emotional way. And to me, that's so much more productive having those conversations when I feel more neutral, not when I'm activated. Um, And it's not, I think you can train yourself when you're activated to like recognize and hear the other person and see like, oh yeah, like that's valid. It's valid for you to feel that way. And also, I'm fucking feeling this kind of way right now. Like there is a way to do that, right? I mean, sometimes I think in the beginning when you're first, if you're not really aware of your emotions and how they move, sometimes you can just be lost in that spiral and not really not be able to hear anybody even in the conversation. And that's when it's not helpful at all to stay in the conversation at that point. But if you can have some level of awareness, or if you have some level of awareness and you're listening to someone, I think it's possible to, recognize and say like, I see your point, I see your perspective. I think that's possible. But I still think I at least need time and space to let my wave complete itself so that I can come back and say, like, this is how I feel about that actually, right? Because in the moment, I'm going through all kinds of emotions. And until I neutralize that, even if I can hear the other person, until I neutralize that, I cannot express how I actually feel about that. Right? What have I been able to neutralize and say, okay, I can see where that came from. I can like that's not actually the issue. This is the issue, right? Or there's no issue at all here. I was just, you know, triggered and I'm feeling extra sensitive today and I, need to be tending to myself a little bit more right now, like whatever that is. It's really interesting. I find as a non-emotional, do you recognize like the amplification of the energy? Like I'm curious about that piece of it because I think that's such an important part to note. You don't just take in the energy, that you amplify it. So, like, do you feel like you went through a journey with that where you notice it now more than maybe you did before? Or how did you come to that? Because I think that might help some people who are not emotional too.
Yeah, I can certainly recognize the amplification. Um, it just something really clicked for me when I understood that I had this open emotional center because for most of my experience up until then, I thought that there was something wrong with me emotionally. Like, because how can I be like it would just be like I'd be feeling fine, but then I would come into a space with others, and I'd be feeling their stuff, but I didn't understand that I was feeling their stuff. And so I thought that it was my emotional wave that or like my emotions or something's wrong, and I would feel them at this rate that the other person would be confused because they're not feeling them at the same rate. It's almost like I could like mirror, but like you said, really kind of widen that emotion. And then the other person's like, what's going on? Why are you acting so crazy? And I'm like, why? I can feel, I can feel it in somebody else. It almost sometimes starts as like a question, like, I think I would even ask people like, what's wrong or something, because I could also feel it too in them, but just not understand that that's what was kind of like rising within me that then would create this kind of explosive argument that would seemingly like come out of nowhere. They would just like hit me by surprise. Like, what was that? and and for a while, again, without my like knowing or having the awareness around it, um it would just we would I would keep trying to figure it out, keep trying to talk about it, keep trying to like um yeah, come to some sort of common ground. And it just never really seemed like that was helpful or working. Um, and then, you know, learning about this, at first, I don't know that I was like, it was more about just noticing, wow, okay, this is what's happening. I can see it now. Now that I have this awareness around it, when it comes up, I can notice this in my relationship. So I'll just take like, my partnership, for instance. I'm in a partnership with someone who is emotional and who's a manifester. And so there's a bit of yeah, like an intensity to the emotional wave and to like the anger that comes up sometimes. And I realize now, after kind of like moving through time with this, um, I can tell now when they are moving through an emotional wave, and I can feel it in myself, and I know that it just needs space. It's just something that like through experimentation, like we've found that this is what works best. Um, but at first we didn't know that, and it would just turn into this big thing. Um, but over time, in recognizing that and talking about it, after we take the space, like really sharing, I mean, my partner's not into human design really, but I do talk about it a lot with them. And I do share this part of it because I think it's really important in relationships. I've also done a lot with the Venus sequence and the gene keys, which I think is another really beautiful tool for bringing awareness to our relationships. And it's about recognizing that it's all just giving us information about our own selves, like it's really bringing us back home um, to take responsibility for our own emotional experience. Um, and a lot of it actually goes back to like childhood and things that are laid down in those formative years of our conditioning. And we attract one another to really look at those places. So now that over the years that I've had the awareness of it, it's just like each time something shifts a little. At first it's just like, oh, I noticed this. I can see that this is what's happening. Then it's like, now that I'm noticing this, I can play with it a little bit differently. I can choose to do something different. And when I start choosing to do something different, then I start to see what works. And once I know what works, now, like compared to when we first entered into a relationship together, our our conflict resolution and our ability to move through issues has changed dramatically. And again, it was just like a process over time, I guess, is the best way I can explain it. But more than anything, it for me, it's been about understanding that when I start to feel the emotions rise, whether it's through being in space with others or it's through a transit, that it's it's just there for as information for me, and it's not there for me to try to like figure out what's wrong, if that makes sense.
Hmm. And I can definitely feel like outside emotions going on, whether that's through a transit or just what's going on in the world. And I'm sure those are probably interrelated as well, right? But like when there's a lot of fear, for example, being amplified in the world, I can feel that even though I'm not tuned into the news or like I still feel that energy. And there is definitely an awareness that can develop in terms of knowing, having that very clear discernment, and that's not that's not my energy. I can feel it and it's a little bit crazy in the world right now, but it's not my energy. I was listening to Ram Dass yesterday. I had a bit of a drive to my event, and and I got back into Ram Dass. I'm gonna be binging his stuff again. But he was talking about uh being in relationship and navigating like compassionately. And one of the examples he brought up is like when somebody comes in and, let's say they're just really angry, let's just say, for example, um, they're really angry and you feel that, and there's two ways that you can respond. You can either take it on, and say like why are you projecting all this anger onto me? Like why, or maybe not even onto me. Why are you projecting all this anger? Like I don't want to be in this angry energy, just, really sort of defensively responding. And then he says you can recognize that, there's anger and that this person is just in the experience of anger right now. And you don't have to take that on. So you can just have compassion for the fact that they're in the experience of anger right now. Right. And he talks about how like now now we're not the ones suffering. I'm not suffering now in your anger because I chose to say I see you in your experience, but I don't have to jump into that. Um and that was interesting to me. And I think an interesting experience when you're navigating partnership too, right? I have a sneeze coming on. How do you navigate um phew, excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Like when you feel these intense emotions, I think sometimes in partnership, we are, so connected and attached, not attached, but maybe more open in our aura than we tend to be with other people. And so that feeling of someone's experience does feel like, in a sense, more personal sometimes. And it's not easy to always like I will say that sometimes like I definitely have been the one that's gone into defensive mode at times, right? Where I'm not understanding why is like I don't want to be angry. Why like I don't want that experience. That's not how I want my day to go. So I'm gonna like go over here or something and I'm gonna just do yoga or do whatever I want to do right now. Because I don't want to start my day like that, you know? Um, but how can I do that in a loving way, you know, instead of just like I need space. I need to, move away from you. I'm not going to engage. I mean, it's why I choose not to watch the news and stuff, right? It's like I'm saying I don't want to hear these fear projections over and over again. I don't want that to be my reality. So I think that this is one for sure Sagittarius thing. Like, what was it? This one reader, what did she say? Um, it was so cool the way she said it, but like that we're optimistic to a fault. Like, maybe she said to our detriment or something. Like we're so optimistic that we're just perpetually disappointed with the world because we're so optimistic all the time. Um, and I feel that. I think that sometimes it's not that I don't know what's going on in the world, but I just believe that we're like, okay, now that we know that that happened, now how do we move through it? How do we move on to the next thing? How do we shift what we're doing? What do we need to change? What did we learn here? It's the same thing emotionally, right? Like I don't want to wake up in a bad mood, right? Even sometimes I can't say that I've never experienced, especially growing a business. There were times that I would wake up and feel scared about where's the money going to come from, right? And I just woke up like that. You think I want to live the rest of my day like that? No, but I had to learn and really like teach myself that that's just a moment. It's not everything. It's not my identity. I get to experience that and then like navigate beyond that. So I don't know what I left you with there, but a whole bunch of stuff.
Lots, yeah, lots to explore. And what I'm really like hearing from it is very much this archetype of the 38 where the earth is, right? Again, getting clear on like what are we, I'm going to put quotes around it again, fighting for? What are we struggling with? Like, I think it's about getting very clear, like, on why we're doing what we're doing and why we're giving energy to what we're giving energy to, because it's easy to, or I don't even know if easy is the right word. Um, we've been conditioned, I think, to almost like become obsessed with like the struggle in a way, and it can almost be worn sometimes as like a badge of honor. uh, Connected to this 38, we can feel it like, so obviously we know this is a full spectrum of energy. The human experience has within it struggle, but it's like, what in this lifetime, what do we want to spend our precious life force energy struggling with? um and it's something as small as like understanding and having the awareness around that and getting clear on that switches that constant like trudge or whatever to the perseverance, because now we know why we're doing this and we can see it through, um instead of just, I just kind of see it as this energy of like, have you ever been in an argument? I think we've talked about this before on here, even maybe. Like where you get to a certain point and you're like, wait, why are we even arguing about this? Like it's that where like sometimes we can get caught up in something that we don't really even care about. And so I guess the question is like, what do we care about? And what are we doing this for? There is a real like sort of existential energy to this channel of the 2838. Um, and it just invites us to get clear on like, how do we want to be experiencing life? And when we wake up in the morning and, okay, yeah, we're worried about this, or this is on our mind, this happened, this could be better, all of these things. But if we just sit, like you said, to during your reading to the artist or the example of the artist, well, if we just take a second, take a pause and say, like, can I come back home and can I create from this place that I really feel connected to? And that's the purpose. It's not, again, it'll be very unique to each of us. but it's like that's where we want to channel our energy. And so we don't, even when you're talking about like not tuning into the news and stuff, again, I think that's a way of like choosing where to channel our energy. I could turn on the news and start to get upset about um, all of the different things. And then I might think from my head that like I need to, you know, figure out this or go do this or like, why is this happening? And what happens is my energy starts to get scattered when maybe the thing that I'm here to do, to help with all of that is my thing, is my art. And so it is this invitation again to come back from um, the sort of getting caught up in the trigger, getting caught up in the energy and like feeling like this physical need to like defend or protect or fight, whatever. Um, and more about like, oh, how can I channel my energy in a way that it's really doing what I want it to do? Um, for the most part, what I really think these energies are asking for is not to like the fight. This came through the other day when I was sitting with the 38. Like the fight isn't with another or even ourselves. Like the fight is around what's possible. Like we're just wanting to expand our view of what is possible and bring new things into our awareness and expand our perspective in that way.
Hmm. I, what I'm thinking about is how early on in my journey, I was in service to everyone else. Um, I was the friend that everyone called for advice. Like when my mom needed something, I was there taking whatever you need. Like I'll be there. I'm there to help kind of thing. And when I began my journey, this is like 15 years ago now. I can't believe it's been that long. When I began my journey, a big part of that started with me learning to say no to people and learning to actually attend to myself and put myself first. And that's a whole process in itself, right? Like learning to say no and how people will react to you for that. And there was a lot of reaction in the way of you're selfish right now. How could you say no to me? What do you mean you don't want to talk about me the entire time we have phone conversations every time? I'm confused. Like, why you're so selfish? If you're that selfish of a friend or a daughter or whatever, right? Like that whole selfish thing came up. And what I'm contemplating now is okay, so I went through that. I'm in service to the other. And then I decided I'm in service to me. And I've been on that island for a while, right? And now like I'm trying to integrate relationship again, in deeper ways. Like how do I be in relationship with people again? Like in a deeper way, friendships, romantic, whatever, without or like still honoring that I'm always going to choose me first. And I think it was like hard for me to say that. In relationships, that's like a no. What do you that's not how you be in a relationship. Like you're supposed to think about us all the time, and how does this affect us? I don't know that I don't know that that's the truth. Like, what is the truth here? How do you, I don't know. Like, I'm like, this is like the next part of integrating back in. Um, and I don't know the answer to it. I don't, yeah. I'm very, it's easy for me to step away, like you were saying, like watch the news and start thinking about like all these things and how can I fix this and or how can I be a part of this? And then coming back to this realization that it's your art that matters. And that's what I believe, right? I believe that I'm here and me being on Kristin Island, focusing on the ways that I want to express myself and what I've learned and be of service to other people and helping them navigate their journey. I love that. And I can do that so well. I can come back to me and be of service in my business to other people without without a problem. I can hold that space. So yeah, now I'm like, well, what is the difference then? What makes it a struggle to me in relationships and not my business? Obviously, because there's not a as deep of a connection, right? Like it's an exchange, it's an auric exchange, if you will, in my business. And then maybe in relationships we're asked to and not enmesh, but like open our auras maybe a little bit more and integrate with another person. And how do we do that without losing ourself? Tell me the answers, Cori.
Oh, this is one of those that I'm certainly the questions that I'm living into. And I think that the answers kind of will find us in their own time. I think we're going through a big shift right now where like the way that relationships are have been modeled to us previously are changing. And again, I love how you said, the two little islands of like being in service to others, being in service to the self. And what I think when I hear that is like to be in service to love, which I think is like the combination of them, is to love thyself and know thyself first and foremost. Because that's how you then can open yourself up and share that which is the service, I believe, with the world. Um, but then yes, how do we come together in some of the more intimate you know, partnerships where we're coming up against, well, this person needs this and this person needs this, and how do they, find a balance with that when they're two totally different things or something. And I think that the probably answer is going to be different in a lot of again, it's like it's such a unique experience. um but I really feel like the strongest relationships hold space for each person to be who they are. And maybe that is more about like, yeah, having more of a space and time than we are typically conditioned to think that relationships should have, you know?
More
Um,
autonomous.
yeah, that's just what comes through right now for me,
Yeah.
I think.
I read a book years ago called How to Love Yourself by Megan Watterson and Lodro Rinsler, I think his name is. And like the one piece I always talk about from the book is they drew this Venn diagram, and the Venn diagram is the two circles that overlap in the middle. And it said like Kristin is, has Kristin's circle and Cori has Cori's circle. And oftentimes, like in the past, the relationship model has been Cori and Kristin become one, right? But now it's like Cori maintains Cori's circle all the time, Kristin maintains her circle all the time. Where we overlap in the middle, we create Cori and Kristin that cannot be created in any other way, right? But it's its own entity. Two people become three, not two people become one. And it's something I share I share it all the time. Like it's the one thing from that book that I love so much. It was so meaningful for me. And to your point in that, yeah, like I work with a lot of people who've lost themselves in relationships in motherhood and the job that they've carried for 20, 30 years because they become that thing, they become that entity, right? So whether that's like me and my job, me and another person, me and my child, whatever that is. And even in like parenting right now, I think that there's a real ask for parents to allow more autonomy with their children. I think that for lack of a better words, like the kids being born right now, like are like in a sense old souls to me. They have wisdom that you might not think that they do because they're 5 years old. Um, and it might be scary to think about parenting from that perspective, right? But I think I feel like to me, that's how new generations are bred, right? Like, how do you think they come up with these like Gen X, Gen Y, millennial, like whatever? It's like there's a code in all the babies that are being born. And, how do we end up with these similar traits or, tendencies that we put into these generational boxes, right? There's a reason for that. There's a reason. It's how we evolve, and relationships being one of the oldest, you know, I mean, maybe not one of the oldest, but, certainly in an old paradigm. And I was thinking after I asked you the question, like, it's not selfish, it's in service to. And something that we talk about too with relationships is like, con or not that we talk about, but I like in my realm of people I follow and stuff, I follow people who talk about like the idea, concept of a conscious relationship, and this opens up conversations about gender roles, about masculine, feminine energetics, about um autonomy, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think that the differences I think in the transition of it, right, is like being in partnership, let's say, with somebody who is, sort of in this new paradigm, and somebody who's in old paradigm, like there's going to be some friction, some trying to overlap there, then there's going to be some pushing. No, we're not overlapping. Remember, like I'm my own person. You're you're a part of me sometimes, but not all of my life, right? And that doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean anything about me either. It doesn't take away from like what we can create together. So it's a real interesting question of how are relationships evolving. And you mentioned that you think that we are evolving in the realm of relationships and maybe more with more autonomy and stuff. And I've had a lot of conversations with many, many clients about, things like polyamory, about things like not not getting married because they just don't believe in the construct of it, living separately. These are all conversations that come up that I think old paradigms like, oh my gosh, like that's not okay. That's not a relationship. What's wrong? What's wrong? Right? And what if it's not wrong? You know? Look at the divorce rate in the country. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so rampant? It's like, to me, it all points to this. Everyone is everyone. I say everyone, but a lot of people are being pushed into this, like, who are you? Space. Who the fuck are you? And whether that comes up in the relationship and it separates from the partner, or, the partners move together in that space, or it comes up after the separation. But a lot of that is guiding people back to who they are, what they want. What is your energy? Were you even happy here? Did you stay here because you thought, I better work it out? This came up actually in sessions yesterday too. We were talking a little bit about the defined heart, and I was saying to someone, like, are you being tenacious? Because I call the defined heart and ego the tenacity center. It's the motivation center, but I call it like, we're the tenacious, we're the ones. I have a defined heart too. But I said to her, like, are you are you staying in this like, is that defined heart energy like pushing you to work this out? Because I'm not going to give up. Come hell or high water, I'm going to get through this, right? I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get to the other side. That's what defined hearts do. Like, even if something is hard, we work through it. We might be kicking and screaming a little bit along the way, but we're going to fucking get through it. There's no giving up. Like, that's why I call it the tenacity center, right? Well, how does that play into relationships? And how do you step back and say, wait a minute, like, should I be sticking this out because divorce is bad? I can't get divorced. I can't be one of those ones with a failed relationship. It's like an identity crisis. Like, the whole world is going through an identity crisis. And when I say the whole world, I mean, like, there are a lot of people waking up to it, but there's a lot of people who aren't too. But the invitation is there. So I think it's real interesting. And Cori sent me some reflection questions. Her and I have been talking a lot about business and stuff on the side, and she sent me some like business reflection questions. And I think it'd be really fun to put those in relationship terms even.
Mhm.
right? So let me see if I can find them real quick. Like, what do I actually want to spend my precious life force doing? You can look at that in a relationship, in a business. How can my business support my gift rather than my gift supporting my business? How can my relationship support my gift rather than my gift supporting my relationship? I don't know. I think it would be, what am I spending energy on that I don't even want to be doing? We were talking about that with arguments, which is so fucking true. It's absurd. Like I can't tell you how many times I stop myself and I'm like, what I don't want to be, I don't even care about this. Like, why are we arguing about this? Like to have an argument? Great, we fucking met that quota today. Like, let's not, I don't care about this. It's not even, sometimes I think that that might be my, I don't know. I don't know if it's anything, but I have an opinion about things. So, like, sometimes I'll just state my opinion and it's not necessarily to like start an argument. It's just like, this is what I think about it. Like, I don't care that you think differently,
Mhm.
but if you want to have a debate about it, I'll have a debate about it. Oh, anyways, there's my wild contemplation for the
I
day.
love it. I love it so much. And it brings up so many cool things to contemplate. One being, like again, around this question of like what are we fighting for? I think a lot of times in relationships, we have this idea that we should always be on the same page or like we should like I experience this in my relationship and a lot of them, right? Like we need to think and feel the same things or something to be in this, you know, healthy relationship. But that's actually not true. To be in a healthy relationship, we need to hold space for us to be ourselves and to think and move through the world in the way that is right and good for us. And how can I, be there for and support another in doing that when I don't feel and think the same way? But I know that that's what they feel and think. And I like what you brought up about the coming together in a relationship, that relationship being a separate entity, because this is a big part of what they talk about in this paradigm shift and mutation that's happening in human design and the gene keys. And the idea is that we each come together in our unique blueprints. And then in the group, the partnership or the small groups, because this is where we're really going to see it, a, another entity is created through our auric fields coming together. And it's like this whole other aura. But in order for that aura to come together, each of us have to be in our auras instead of in somebody else's aura or trying to, fit into something that's not us. I know we talk about it quite a bit on here, but if you really do think of a puzzle, right? For it to come together, each piece has to be its piece. If it's trying to be like another piece, we're not going to put the puzzle together, you know? So
Mhm.
it is really like we're here to relax really more into who we are. It's less about, I mean, there's a journey, obviously, but it's less about trying to figure it out and more about just relaxing because it's already who we are. Like it's there. We gravitate towards moving through that way in the world. We've just been told that there's something wrong with it or that we should fix it or that we need to, fold this piece over to fit into this relationship. But the invitation, I think, as we move forward is no, that we want to keep all our pieces the way that they are. And then when we come together, something else is created in that. And like trusting in that, trusting deeply in that. And I like another point that you bring up because I think that there will be some shifts and changes in how we live. And, maybe we live more in communities, but we have our separate little spaces, our four walls or something, where it's, again, we don't have to share, you know, in human design, they talk about a lot about sleeping in your own energy, you know, like we don't have to share the same bed. We don't have to share the same room. You know, we can have, each person can have their own space, but still be together. And maybe that's more powerful than when we're, you know, doing something because that's the way things have been done, and kind of muddying the energy, so to speak. Because then if you're always with someone, you know, like the lines can get really blurry. I think I've talked about that in my experience. It's been something that, like, my alone time is really essential in coming back to center. And I think that can be said for a lot of us. And I think it's connected to this like liberation and freedom that we get from the 3955 channel. You know, the 55 frequency bands, I know the sun and the earth aren't there, but the north node is, and the north node is calling us all, you know, into this energy. And its frequency bands are victimization, freedom, and freedom. You know, it's calling us to look at where we've become a victim and where we've folded over those pieces to try to fit in or to be accepted or whatever the case is, and where we can start to take back our sovereignty and responsibility and, you know, be who we came here to be. And that's where we find that freedom, because we know that no one can take that away from us, even if, you know, the mind thinks it can.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that you brought up the aura piece. So isn't it like the grandest gesture to be in relationship with somebody who looks at you in your individuality and loves you and doesn't try to say, well, you should be thinking more about this, or like, you should be putting us first. You should be whatever. But they look at you in your pureness and say yes to all of this. That is a grand gesture of love. Not morphing someone into whatever you think they should be, right? Like, we're not forcing people to be who we want them to be in relationship. Not forcing them to meet our checklist. Right? We're loving them as they are, and then co-creating something together that gets to be unique to that time and space, not to the whole being of the relationship. And stop telling people that they're selfish if they give a damn about themselves or think about themselves first. Because we show up better in relationship, better for ourselves, better for kids, better for the world, better for our clients, everything, when we are in service to ourselves. That's when we hold the ultimate integrity.
Amen.
So, okay, we're going to wrap up now. Do you have anything else you'd like to add, Cori?
I think I'm feeling pretty complete. The only thing that I would maybe say was still sparked by what you were sharing, and then I was reminded of it just right now, is that too, we can kind of trust in the cycles of relationships. Again, like if everything has seasons, cycles, you know, rhythms, that maybe not all of our relationships are meant to be forever until death do us part. Maybe they're just until like a death of that way of being, and then something else comes along. And like honoring those relationships, not seeing them as failures if they didn't, last the long run. But like knowing that again, there are cycles, there are to our um to our relationships and to our commitments, and that sometimes something comes to an end and it doesn't take anything away from what it was. And that's, yeah, I think another thing that will become more and more clear to us is that it doesn't have to be forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't. I mean, it can be, right?
I was just listening to a podcast that this woman was saying, I've been with my husband for 30 years, but in that time I've had three distinct marriages with
Mhm.
him, and that's also really beautiful, right? If you can look at, like, we're not in this chapter anymore. So we can either close it and move on together, or we can close it and move on apart.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, my loves, thank you for being here with us in this contemplation. We love, love, love hearing your thoughts and comments and experiences of the energies, and also when you share and leave us little comments. We love that. So thank you so much for doing that, and we will see you next week sometime.